My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Well, today it would have been, of course, particularly relevant to begin in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, because today we celebrate the solemnity of the Blessed Trinity. So, what gospel does the Church invite us to meditate on this day? Was it when Jesus outlined the nature of the Blessed Trinity? Well, we know that the word itself, Trinity, is not in the gospel. That would come later as a kind of shorthand for what we see today and in other places in the gospel, but in particular in today's gospel. We picture now the 11 disciples who went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. And when they all saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. And then Jesus approached them and said to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." Well, let's look at that phrase. When they saw him on that mountain, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Well, who doubted? And where did this hesitancy come from? They were seeing Jesus on a hilltop. There was a beautiful view. Maybe the sun was setting so that there was a marvelous background. He was maybe silhouetted with a kind of a brilliant halo that came forth, and his garments were shining. The sound of his voice was strong and confident like a solid leader. His hands extended over his flock in blessing like a shepherd protecting his sheep. And the men around him were mesmerized with awe, almost fearing lest they be reproved for saying anything wrong. But with all this, why doubt? Why did some doubt? What was the problem? Well, those who doubted would have been those who had so deeply remembered Jesus' prayer to the Father that he would so gently sigh with the Spirit and even look up to heavens. And so they had perceived something intrinsic about him and his relation with the Father and with the Spirit. But now, as he was standing there alone on that hilltop, maybe the ghost of the military Messiah was kind of conjured up. Is he going to tell us now to take up the sword and conquer the Romans? This was all the charismatic leader really needed. But then he spoke again, and all doubts suddenly vanished. He approached them. "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." Well, that power that he mentioned was not the power of the sword. It was not military power. So what joy at hearing again that word about the name of the Father. Jesus, we remembered that this is the Father whom you had prayed to. That's who you had a relationship with. That's who had sent you. You said the Father had sent you. And indeed, at other times, Jesus had spoken about the Son of Man, that luminous figure in the book of the prophet Daniel, the Son of Man that was coming in on the clouds. That Son of Man was clearly Jesus himself. And he said he would be with us always. and that mysterious hidden spirit that was really the unifying factor to everything that Jesus had been saying all along, with that command about baptizing in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Now, when he said that, well, I think the doubts disappeared. Yes, they doubted at first when they thought it might be like a military Messiah, but now that it disappeared, because he was now reflecting what he had said during the earthly life. Of course, as we said, the actual word Trinity was not here, but that would come with time, after some reflection, based on everything that the Lord was saying in all these events. That real doubt or hesitancy came from that nervousness that maybe God was some kind of military power, and that Jesus somehow would no longer be involved. So let us not fear that he will no longer be involved. He will be involved, together with the Father who sent him and the Holy Spirit. Naturally, the mystery of the Blessed Trinity is that. It's a mystery, and we should try at least to understand it. Remember that everybody knows that famous story of St. Patrick who picked up the famous shamrock leaf and showed it to his friends. And he asked if this was one leaf or 3 leaves. And they looked at and said, well, it kind of looks like one, but clearly it has 3 parts. And, well, they were in doubt. And he said, well, God is one God in 3 persons, but I guess it's a little bit more complex than that, right? One God in 3 persons. It's a simple image. Or St. Cyril, who was the teacher of the Slavs, he tried to explain the mystery of the Holy Trinity by using the sun, S-U-N, the sun as an example. He said, God the Father is that blazing sun, God the Son is its light, and God the Holy Spirit is its heat. But there's only one Son. So there are 3 persons in the Holy Trinity, but God is one and indivisible. Sun, light, and heat. That's why the celebrant on Pentecost will be dressed in red. And you're supposed to, upon seeing this red, you're supposed to think not of blood, which is what reminds us when we celebrate the martyrs, but of the blazing and purifying fire of the Holy Spirit, those tongues of fire that came to rest on the heads of the apostles. And they gave off light, they gave off understanding, warmth of charity, and all the gifts of the Holy Spirit. But the apostles who had a direct experience of the Father, who, at least of his voice, the voice of the Father, who felt the power of the Holy Spirit come upon them like tongues of fire and illuminate their minds, and of course constantly saw Jesus speak to him, they did not need these images of the shamrock and the fire and all that. They didn't really need those, because they really had the direct experience of Jesus, who spoke to them, the voice of the Father, and of course the fire of the Holy Spirit. They kind of experienced them. So that's why Christian theology has sought to synthesize the truth of God with this expression, that God is only one substance in 3 persons. That is, God is not a solitude, but a perfect communion of love. Perfect communion of love. And for this reason, the human person, you and I, are made in the image of God. And we realize that we actually realize ourselves in love. And that is expressed in that sincere gift of self. So perhaps if we want to give ourselves more to others, to those in our family, to those that we work with, or those in our community, maybe one way for us to live more deeply the mystery of the Blessed Trinity is to try to distinguish when each person is dealing with us. It's not the same to get the example of, let's say, fortitude in the Son, in Jesus the Son, or the openness to God's grace that we see when we deal with the Holy Spirit, or even the sense of abandonment to God's providence when we get worried about the future. Well, we abandon ourselves to God the Father and His providence for us. And since the Lord said, I am with you always until the end of the age, let us try to pick up the different subtle ways that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit is with us always. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.